I'll take you dead or alive. Mountain man, bounty hunter, told the obese fugitive girl she's so fat she probably broke the bank floor when she robbed it. Laughter exploded inside the Tombstone Sheriff's office, bouncing off the cracked walls and dusty windows. Miners in sweat-stained shirts, cowhands still smelling of horse and sweat, and two drunk cowboys pointed at the freshly nailed wanted poster as if it were the funniest thing they'd seen all week. On the wall, the paper fluttered in the desert breeze leaking under the door. Wanted, dead or alive. Magnolia Maggie O'Brien, robbery of First National Bank, murder of bank guard reward, $5,000. Below the bold letters, the blotchy photograph showed only enough to humiliate, not enough to identify. A soft, round face turned away, a riot of red hair spilling over her shoulders, the curve of a large body in an ill-fitting dress. $5,000 for that? One man scoffed. Does the poster say if that's her weight or the reward? More laughter. Look at her, another sneered. Bet she didn't run, just rolled out the back door with the gold. The sheriff didn't join the jokes, but he didn't stop them either. He spat tobacco juice into a dented spittoon and shrugged. Fat or not, she's a killer, he drawled. Shot the guard point blank, slipped out with the money before anyone could blink. Don't matter what she looks like, she's dangerous. Dangerous? A lanky cowboy snorted. She looks like she'd lose a fist fight with a staircase. The room shook with another round of crude laughter. None of them were there when the bank guard died. None of them saw the way fear can twist a story out of shape. All they saw was a body they thought it was safe to mock. The saloon doors across the street swung open, and a man stepped out into the fading light. Colt Hunter Remington. He moved with the loose, quiet assurance of a man who'd spent more nights under the stars than under a roof. Tall and broad-shouldered, his shirt stretched over muscle earned by hard living, not vanity. Sun had carved lines into his tanned skin, and a pale, jagged scar dragged from his brow down across his left cheek, like someone had tried to erase him and failed. People fell silent when he walked past. Not out of respect, out of instinct. Predators recognized other predators. Colt pushed open the sheriff's office door without knocking. The room's noise died instantly. He walked straight to the wall, eyes scanning the notices until they locked on the new poster. He studied it another long, careful moment. The blurred photo, the red hair, the curve of a large shoulder caught mid-turn, as though the woman had been trying to hide even from the camera. 5,000, he said quietly. That's right, the sheriff replied. Magnolia O'Brien, bank robber, killer, last seen heading toward the Black Hills. You interested, Remington? Colt's gray eyes didn't leave the poster, dead or alive. Everyone in the room leaned in just a little, waiting. At last, he reached up, tore the poster from the wall, folded it once, and slid it into his coat. I'll take her, he said, voice flat, final. Dead or alive. Outside, the wind rose, sweeping dust through the streets of Tombstone. Somewhere out in the hills, an obese, red-haired woman breathed, not yet knowing that the most relentless mountain man in the territory had just claimed her fate. If you're listening to this right now, tell me in the comments where in the world you're hearing this story from. Tombstone might be far away in time, but you and I are sharing this moment together. The sun dipped low over the Black Hills, staining the sky a bruised orange as Colt Remington followed the faint trail of footprints through pine needles and shale. Whoever he was hunting moved slowly, too slowly to be a seasoned outlaw. The prints were deep, spaced unevenly, dragging slightly in places as if their maker carried both weight and exhaustion. He crouched beside a print and pressed 2 fingers against the impression. "Female," he murmured, "heavy set, not trained, running scared." Exactly like the poster promised. He rose to his full height, adjusted the Winchester slung across his back, and continued up the narrow hillside trail. Coyotes cried somewhere in the distance. A storm threatened in the west. He didn't hurry. He never did. He had learned long ago, rushing made you sloppy, and sloppy men died fast. By the time dusk slid into full darkness, he saw it. A faint glow between the trees. A cabin. Small, lonely. Smoke drifted from a crooked chimney. He approached silently, boots whispering over the forest floor, every movement precise. Through the cracked window, he glimpsed her. Maggie O'Brien. She stood at the table stirring a pot over a fire, her back toward him. Her hair, an unruly mass of red curls, glowed in the lantern light. She was big, bigger than he expected, round in the hips, soft in the arms, shoulders stooped as if life had pressed on them hard. She moved with a heaviness that spoke not of laziness, but of someone who had learned to carry more than her share of burdens. There was nothing about her that matched the picture of a cold-blooded killer. Colt's lips thinned. Looks didn't matter. Evidence did. He drew his Colt .45. Then, with a swift kick, he burst through the door. "Don't move," he barked. "Hands where I can see 'em." The pot clattered from Maggie's hands as she spun around, eyes wide with terror. She stumbled backward, tripping over her own skirt and crashing into the wall. Her chest heaved. Tears formed instantly, not the defiant tears of a hardened criminal, but the raw panic of a prey cornered by a wolf. "Please don't shoot me," she gasped. "Please, I didn't do anything." Colt kept his stance firm. "Magnolia O'Brien, you're under arrest?" I'm Maggie," she stammered, voice cracking. "But I'm not a robber. I've never robbed anything in my life." "5 witnesses say otherwise." Her face crumpled. "They're lying. They also say you shot a man dead." "I don't know how to shoot," she cried. "I'm afraid of guns. I freeze when I see them. Ask anyone who knows me. They'll tell you." Colt's gaze swept over her trembling hands, her pale, shaking lips, the way her knees bowed inward under fear. She looked like a woman who had spent her life apologizing for her own existence, not someone who walked into a bank and pulled a trigger. But Colt wasn't paid to doubt. He was paid to bring people in. "Turn around," he ordered, "hands behind your back." "No, please," she whispered. "You don't understand. If they take me back to Tombstone, they'll hang me without listening, and I didn't do anything. I swear it on my mother's grave." "Turn around," he repeated. Her eyes squeezed shut, and her shoulders slumped in defeat. She turned, but the moment he approached with the rope, a shot cracked outside the cabin. Colt shoved Maggie to the floor with one arm as another bullet blasted through the window, splintering wood inches from his head. "Get down!" he snarled. Her scream tore through the room. Outside, a rough voice shouted, "There she is! Grab the girl and kill the man!" Colt's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. Frank O'Brien, the girl's brother, a known thief, a ringleader, a man with a trail of bodies behind him, and the man who had fingered Maggie for the crime. Colt's eyes hardened. In one violent motion, he flipped the table over for cover. Maggie sobbed behind it. "It's Frank! It's Frank! He's come to finish it!" "Quiet!" Colt hissed, drawing his second Colt .45. He pressed his back to the overturned table, jaw gritted. "How many men does he have?" 8, she whispered. He said he'd kill me if I ever told anyone what I saw." "What you saw?" Colt turned to her sharply. "You mean you—" Another bullet slammed into the wall. "No time. On your belly. Stay behind me," he ordered. Maggie obeyed, tears dripping silently onto the dusty floorboards. Colt rose to one knee, aimed, and fired through the window. A scream echoed outside. He wasn't thinking about bounty posters anymore. He wasn't thinking about money. He wasn't thinking about the promise he'd made to Tombstone Sheriff. He was thinking about the terrified, trembling girl pressed behind him. Maggie O'Brien might be many things, but she wasn't a murderer, and Frank O'Brien had just made one fatal mistake. He'd declared war on the wrong man. The next bullet punched through the cabin wall with the force of a hammer, spraying splinters across the floor. Maggie screamed and curled tighter behind the overturned table, hands over her ears. Colt didn't look back. He couldn't. Every sense in his body was tuned outward, reading the rhythm of footsteps, the angle of gunfire, the way the night breathed its warnings through the pine needles. 8 men, enough to burn this cabin to the ground, but only if they reached him first. Colt ducked low and rolled to the shadowed corner beside the window. Another shot shattered the lantern, plunging the room into darkness, except for the trembling glow of the fire in the hearth. "Fan out!" Frank O'Brien roared from outside. "I want the girl alive. Kill the son of a bitch protecting her." Colt's pulse didn't change. He breathed once, deeply. Then he moved. He popped up just long enough to fire 3 shots, clean, sharp, deadly. A scream cut the darkness. One down. He dropped again before the return volley hit, bullets thudding into the walls like fists of iron. Behind him, Maggie clutched the table leg, shaking uncontrollably. "Colt, Colt, I can't do this," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't be brave like you." "You don't have to be brave," Colt growled without looking back. "You just have to stay alive." He crawled fast along the wall and kicked open the side window. 2 shadows crouched near the woodpile outside. Before they could react, Colt fired again. 2 more screams, 3 down. But the 4th man saw the muzzle flash. He raised his rifle. "Maggie!" Colt barked. "Get down now!" She dropped flat right as a bullet tore through the window frame above her head, showering her with dust. Her sobs turned into gasps. Colt shot the man clean through the chest. 4 down. Outside, Frank cursed loud enough to shake the mountain. "You idiots! Spread out! The girl doesn't leave this place alive!" Boots thundered around the cabin. Maggie's breathing grew sharp and fast. Colt could hear her panic rising, too fast. She was seconds from a breakdown. "Maggie?" he said sharply. She swallowed, trembling. Yes? Look at me." She lifted her head just enough to see him silhouetted by the fire. His scar caught the glow, his eyes cold and steady. "You're going to be fine. Nothing's going to touch you, not while I'm standing." Her breath hitched. Somehow the words steadied her. You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know you're innocent," he said. "I know you're terrified, and I know your brother wants you dead." Another volley shattered the door hinges. Colt scooped Maggie into his arms and dove behind the stone hearth. When they landed, she gasped in shock. Why are you protecting me? You said you'd take me dead or alive." Colt met her eyes. "I didn't understand who you were then." Another bullet passed so close it scorched his sleeve. He didn't flinch. "Tell me," he commanded quietly. "Tell me what happened at the bank." Maggie clutched her arms, eyes wide with the memory she'd tried to outrun for months. "Frank planned it," she whispered. "He said he found a way to clear all his debts. I thought he meant he'd gotten a job. But when he dragged me to the bank that night, I knew it was wrong." Colt listened without moving. "He told me to stand guard. I said no. I begged him to stop. He laughed, and then—" her voice cracked. "Then he shot the bank guard. Shot him without blinking." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "He said if I didn't take the blame, he'd kill Rosie, my little sister, 14 at the time. What was I supposed to do? I ran to the marshal to confess, but Frank got there first and said I helped him." Colt's jaw tightened. Hard. That was all he needed. Frank wasn't just guilty. He was filth. Outside, Frank screamed in frustration. "Burn the place if you have to. She doesn't leave here alive." Colt's eyes darkened to steel. He rose and grabbed the loaded Winchester from beside the door. "Maggie," he said, voice low, "you're going to crawl under that bed. You're going to cover your ears. And no matter what you hear, no matter what happens, do not move until I come for you." Her voice shook. "Colt, please don't go." "I'm coming back," he said. His hand brushed her cheek just for a moment. "You have my word." She hesitated, then nodded. Colt slipped outside like a shadow. The night swallowed him. For a heartbeat, Maggie only heard her own breathing. Then the mountain exploded. Gunfire ripped through the trees. Men shouted. Horses screamed. The sky lit with muzzle flashes as Colt tore through Frank's men like a storm. Maggie pressed her hands over her mouth as a body slammed against the cabin wall outside. Another went down with a guttural cry, then another and another. Finally, a single shot. Silence. Maggie's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She stayed under the bed, shaking, praying, choking on fear. Then the door creaked open. "Maggie," Colt called quietly, "it's safe. Come out." She crawled out slowly, eyes wide. Colt stood in the doorway, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve, not his, and the cold fury in his eyes fading into something softer as he looked at her. "It's over," he said, "for tonight." She stumbled into him, burying her face in his chest. He froze, startled, then slowly, carefully wrapped an arm around her, not as a captor, not as a bounty hunter, but as a shield. "You kept your word," she whispered. "I told you," Colt murmured. "You stay behind me. You live." When she finally pulled back, their eyes met in the flicker of the dying fire. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Something had shifted. Something neither of them could ignore anymore. Morning came quietly in the Black Hills, the kind of gray dawn where the sky seemed unsure whether it wanted to reveal the sun or hide it forever. A thin mist clung to the trees, curling around the cabin like pale fingers. Maggie woke to the scent of pine smoke and the faint clatter of metal. For one terrified moment, she thought Frank's men had returned. Then she saw Colt. He was crouched near the hearth, feeding small pieces of kindling into the fire. The flames lit the planes of his face, strong jaw, scarred cheek, eyes narrowed in focus. His coat hung on a peg, revealing a linen shirt fitted across broad shoulders and a holster strapped tight to his chest. He looked less like a bounty hunter this morning, more like a man who had spent a lifetime keeping himself too far from the world. Maggie lifted her head slightly. He turned. "You're awake," he said simply. His voice was deep, steady, in a way that pressed comfort into her bones. She sat up slowly, wincing as her back twinged from the hours she had spent hiding under the bed. Colt crossed the room with a canteen in hand. "Drink." She did. The cool water soothed her dry throat. He watched her drink with an expression she couldn't read. Not suspicion, not hostility. Something quieter, something like concern he didn't want to admit he felt. "I made porridge," he said gruffly, as if embarrassed. Maggie blinked. "You cooked?" "Don't make a big deal of it." A small smile tugged her lips, surprising even herself. Colt placed a bowl into her hands. It was simple. Oats, a little salt, just barely warmed. Hardly a feast. But it was the first warm meal someone had made for her in years. She whispered, "Thank you." Colt turned away quickly, pretending to busy himself with the fire. "Eat slow. Your stomach's probably tight from stress." She took a bite. He was right. It felt strange at first, but warm, comforting. When she glanced up again, she found him staring at her with unreadable eyes. He looked away immediately. She didn't. Something about his silence, his stillness, steadied her in a way she never expected. She wasn't used to people being gentle. She wasn't used to surviving the night to see morning, and she certainly wasn't used to a man like Colt Remington watching over her until the sun rose. Colt finally broke the silence. "We stay here for a day or two. You need rest. After that, we move." Her spoon paused. "Move? Where?" "To a cabin I keep deeper in the mountains. Frank knows this place now. He'll be back with more men." Her appetite vanished. "I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me." Colt softened, barely visibly, but she felt it. "You didn't ask for this, and you're not alone anymore." The word struck her harder than any gunshot she'd heard last night. Not alone. She had been alone for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. Colt rose, grabbed his Winchester, and stepped outside to check the perimeter. Maggie watched from the window. He moved like a creature born of the forest. Quiet, controlled, every footfall measured. When he returned, he brushed snow from his shoulders and shut the door behind him. "All clear?" Maggie hugged herself. Do you think Frank really wants me dead?" Colt studied her face for a long moment. "I don't think," he said quietly. "I know." Her breath hitched. "But he'll have to go through me to get to you." Her eyes lifted to his, incredulous. "You would risk everything for someone you barely know?" Colt looked away again. "You're innocent," he said. "That's enough." Maggie swallowed hard. "Most people wouldn't care." "I'm not most people." "No," she thought, "you're not. You're something else entirely." By afternoon, the storm arrived. Snow fell in thick, heavy sheets, muting the world outside. The cabin rattled in the wind, but Maggie sat near the fire, wrapped in one of Colt's thick wool blankets. He had insisted. "You'll get sick if you don't keep warm," he'd said. She had almost cried at the gentleness of it. While the storm raged, she cleaned up the dishes, swept the floor, repaired a tear in a curtain. She moved with quiet purpose. Routine soothed her nerves. Colt watched her for a while from the corner, sharpening his knife. Finally, he spoke. "Your brother. You said he threatened your sister." Maggie's hands froze in the folds of the curtain. "Yes." "Do you believe she's safe now?" The curtain slipped from her fingers. "No," she whispered. "Frank doesn't leave loose ends. Rosie is the only person I've ever had. He knows I'd do anything for her." Colt set the knife down slowly. "We'll find her." Maggie looked up sharply. "We?" "Yes." Her lips trembled. Why are you being so kind to me? I'm nobody. I'm just Maggie." He walked toward her, boots thudding softly on the wooden floor. He stopped only a foot away. "Look at me," he said. She did. What she saw in his eyes nearly undid her. "You're not a nobody," Colt said quietly, "and you deserve someone to fight for you." Her breath shook. Before she could speak, a gust of wind slammed against the cabin, shaking it. Colt's eyes flicked to the windows. "Storm's getting worse. We'll be stuck here tonight." Maggie nodded, trying to steady her heartbeat. Colt added, "I'll keep the fire going. You take the bed." Her eyes widened. "No, Colt, you take the bed. You're injured. Your arm." "It's nothing." "But I said take it." There was no anger in his voice, just finality. A man unaccustomed to being argued with. Still, she tried. "I'm too heavy. I'll take up too much." "Maggie," he interrupted, tone softer, "it's a bed. Beds are for sleeping, not for judgments." Her throat tightened. Something in him, some small, quiet decency, saw her as a person, not as the body people mocked or dismissed. She turned away to hide the tears. Colt noticed. He didn't comment. Instead, he carried in more firewood, split logs with clean strokes, then stoked the fire until the room glowed with warmth. As night fell, Maggie lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling beams shaped by time and storms. She could hear Colt pacing softly, checking the windows, the door, the shadows. Protecting, watching, guarding. She had never slept near a man before, never trusted one, never believed one would risk himself for her. Yet tonight, in a lonely cabin on a frozen mountain, she felt safer than she ever had in her life. When Colt finally settled into the chair by the fire, he glanced at her one last time. "Sleep," he murmured. "I'm here." Her eyes fluttered shut. She slept for the first time in months without fear. The storm raged for 2 days, trapping them inside the cabin while the world outside disappeared under a white shroud. Snow piled against the doorframe. Frost traced the window edges like a warning. The wind screamed through the pines with the voice of something ancient and hungry. Inside, the fire never died. Colt made sure of that. Whenever the flames dimmed, he rose from his chair, added another log, and sat back down without a word. Maggie watched him work, silent, steady, tireless. He moved like a man shaped by years of survival, but there were moments when he thought she wasn't looking, that a deeper heaviness showed in his eyes, a weight he carried alone. On the second night, he handed her a bowl of stew made from dried deer meat and the last of the root vegetables. "Eat all of it," he said. "You cooked again," she whispered. "It's food. Someone has to make it." She smiled softly. "You're kinder than you pretend to be." Colt's jaw flexed. "I'm not kind. I'm practical." But the way he pushed the bowl closer told her the truth. They sat across from each other, the fire crackling between them. Maggie ate slowly, warming from the inside out. She felt safe, though she knew she had no right to. Safety was a luxury she hadn't dared believe in. Colt broke the silence. "You talk in your sleep?" Her spoon paused. I do? Last night. You said Rosie's name." Maggie's breath hitched. "I dream about her every night. Sometimes good dreams, mostly nightmares." "You miss her," Colt said quietly. "She's the only family I ever had," Maggie whispered. "She was the brave one, the smart one. People liked her. They looked at her and saw hope. When they looked at me, they saw—" She hesitated, voice shrinking. "Something they didn't want." Colt's eyes sharpened. "Who told you that?" She looked down. "People. All my life." "People are idiots." Her eyes flickered to his. "You don't understand, Colt. Men never looked at me without laughing. Women didn't want to stand near me. I used to hide behind buildings when I walked through town so people wouldn't stare." Colt's expression darkened, not at her, but at the world that had carved those wounds. "Maggie," he said, voice low but steady, "the world is full of loud fools who judge what they don't understand. They're not worth your breath." Her throat tightened. "You talk like you've lived through that." Colt leaned back, gaze drifting to the window where snow thrashed against the glass. For a long moment he didn't answer. When he finally did, his voice carried a rawness she hadn't heard before. "My father died because people judged him too fast." Maggie froze. Colt continued, eyes distant. "He was the sheriff of a mining town. Strict, fair. Raised me alone after my mother died. Then one day, a rich silver baron accused him of taking bribes. No evidence, no witnesses, just a rumor whispered loud enough." Maggie's heart sank. "What happened?" she whispered. "He was arrested," Colt said flatly, "taken to prison. They locked him in a damp cell with no medical care. A month later, he died of pneumonia." Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. Colt's jaw tightened until the muscle twitched. "When the truth came out a year after his death, the Baron walked free. No punishment, no consequences, and my father stayed buried." "Oh, Colt," Maggie whispered. "I vowed after that day," he said, voice edged with steel, "to never let the innocent suffer again, even if it means breaking the law to protect them." Her breath trembled. "Is that why you're helping me?" Colt met her gaze. In the firelight, his eyes looked tired, human, breakable. "I recognized the same look in you that my father had," he said. "A person caught in a lie they didn't deserve." Maggie looked away, unable to hold the weight of his truth. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what they did to your father." "Don't be," Colt said. "Just don't give up on yourself like he did." A silence settled, filled only by the storm's howling. Maggie felt small, but not in the way she had felt all her life. Colt didn't shrink her. He saw her, and that terrified her more than the bullets. She whispered, "Colt, what if Frank finds us before the storm clears?" "He won't. But if he does?" "I said he won't." She swallowed. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I'm better than him," Colt answered simply, "and because I'm not letting anything happen to you." Her chest tightened painfully. "Why?" Colt stared into the fire as if searching for an answer he didn't want to say aloud. Finally, he spoke. "Because I care about you, Maggie." Her breath hitched. He continued, voice roughened by honesty. "More than I should." She pressed a hand to her chest, trembling. "Colt, I—" Before she could finish, the horses outside shrieked in alarm. Colt shot to his feet, hand on his gun. "Stay behind me." Maggie's heart pounded as he moved to the window. His eyes narrowed. Tracks, fresh ones, multiple sets. He grabbed his coat, pulled his knife from the table, and checked the chamber of his Colt .45. "Colt, who is it?" Maggie asked, her voice barely a breath. "Frank's scouts," Colt said, calm but deadly. "They're checking the mountain. The storm slowed them down, but it didn't stop them." Maggie's blood turned cold. "Colt, what do we do?" Colt placed his hands on her shoulders, firm, grounding, warm. "We prepare," he said, "and we run before nightfall. But the storm—" "I don't care about the storm," Colt said sharply. "I care about keeping you alive." Her breath trembled. "Will we make it?" His eyes met hers, steady and unyielding. "As long as I'm breathing, no one touches you." And in that moment, Maggie believed him. She believed every word. By late afternoon, the storm eased into an eerie stillness, the kind of silence that didn't feel natural, too still, too watchful, as if the mountain itself held its breath. Colt strapped the last of their supplies to the saddle and tightened the cinch with a sharp pull. Maggie stood beside him, wrapped in her cloak, trembling but trying desperately not to show it. "Stay close," Colt said. "Don't fall behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to, and if anything happens—" Maggie shook her head quickly. "Nothing's going to happen to you." Colt paused. Slowly, he placed a hand against her cheek. The gesture surprised them both. "It might," he said softly, "but it won't happen to you. I'll see to that." The words went through her like fire and ice mixed together. He swung onto his horse, then reached down and pulled her up behind him with ease. The heat of his body seeped through her layers as he nudged the horse forward along the snowy trail. The mountains stretched ahead, steep, unforgiving, lined with black timber and shadows deep enough to hide a dozen gunmen. Colt guided them along a narrow ridge, his eyes scanning constantly, jaw clenched tight. He felt it before he heard it, a shift in the wind, a creak of snow giving way, a single breath held too long behind the rocks. He yanked the reins hard. "Down!" Maggie cried out as he threw her from the saddle and dove after her. They rolled through the snow just as gunfire erupted from the ridge above. Bullets tore through the air where they had just been. Maggie's hands flew to her ears. Colt was already up, already firing back, already dragging her behind a boulder. "Frank's men," he growled. "They found us!" Fear seized her throat. "Colt, we're trapped." "We're never trapped." He rose just enough to fire again, one clean shot, then another. A scream echoed from above. But it wasn't enough. More shadows appeared at the ridgeline, rifles aimed downward. Maggie clung to his arm. "We can't outrun them. There's too many." Colt's breath steamed in the cold air. He wasn't panicking, but he was calculating. Fast. "They want you alive," he said. "Frank wants to kill you himself. That buys us time." Maggie shuddered so violently her teeth chattered. "Please, please don't leave me." Colt froze. He turned to her, and for the first time she saw fear, not for himself, but for her, glimmer in his eyes. "I'm not leaving you," he said, voice low, fierce. "You hear me? You stay beside me, always." Another bullet exploded against the rocks. Colt grabbed her wrist. "Move!" They sprinted along the ridge, stumbling through deep snow. Maggie's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she pushed herself beyond every limit she thought she had because Colt's hand was wrapped around hers. Gunshots rang out in sharp, terrifying bursts. Snow exploded beside them. Maggie tripped, but Colt caught her before she hit the ground. "Keep going," he urged, pulling her up with one powerful arm. "I've got you." Ahead, a fallen pine blocked the trail. Colt shoved her behind it, just as more gunfire thundered from the ridge. "We need the slope," he said. "The slope?" Maggie gasped. "That's a cliff." "Not a cliff," Colt muttered. "A way out." He pulled his knife and cut a coil of rope from his saddle. Snow whipped around them. Men shouted from above. Colt stepped close, so close she felt the heat of him despite the cold. "Maggie, listen to me. I'm going to lower you down. The ground below is soft with snow. You'll be fine." Her eyes filled. "Not without you." His expression cracked just for a heartbeat. "You think I'm letting you out of my sight?" He fastened the rope around her waist with sure, steady hands. "You're strong," he murmured. "Stronger than you know. Trust me." "I do," she whispered. "With everything." He lowered her over the ridge carefully, muscles straining. Gunshots echoed above. One bullet grazed his shoulder. He hissed, but didn't slow. Maggie cried out, "Colt!" "I'm fine," he gritted. "Keep going." She touched the ground at last, but before she could call up to him, Colt tied off the rope and slid down beside her in one swift, controlled drop. He landed hard. Snow sprayed around them. Maggie threw her arms around him in relief. "You're hurt! Your shoulder—" Colt wrapped one arm around her waist, pulling her close as more gunmen appeared at the ridgetop. "Run," he said. "Now." They fled into the trees, two figures against the endless white, while Frank's furious scream tore down the mountain after them. The storm had ended. The real hunt had begun. Night fell fast in the Black Hills, so fast it felt unnatural, as if the wilderness itself wanted to extinguish every trace of safety they had left. The trees thickened, swallowing moonlight. Frost clung to Maggie's lashes. Colt's breathing grew harsher, heavier, but his grip on her hand never loosened. They pushed through a gully of frozen brush before Colt finally slowed and pulled her beneath a rock overhang half hidden by pine boughs. His shoulder was bleeding badly now. Maggie's breath caught. "Colt, sit, please. Let me look at it." "We don't have time," he rasped. "You're losing blood." "Doesn't matter. It matters to me." That made him pause, just long enough. Maggie tore off one of her petticoats, hands trembling, and pressed it to the bullet graze. Colt hissed in pain but didn't pull away. Snowflakes melted on his skin. His jaw clenched, but his eyes, those hard gray eyes, softened as they watched her work. "You shouldn't care this much," he murmured. "I do," Maggie whispered. "I can't help it." Before he could answer, twigs snapped above them. Frank's voice thundered across the clearing. "Maggie, you can hide behind the bounty hunter all you want. He'll die just like the guard died, and you'll die screaming next." Colt stiffened. Maggie's breath broke. Frank stepped into view on the ridge above, lantern in one hand, rifle in the other. Shadows of his remaining men circled behind him, wolves ready to tear into anything that moved. "Bring the girl here," Frank shouted, "and maybe I'll let you crawl away alive." Colt rose to his full height, blood dripping from his arm, every inch of him carved from fury and resolve. "You'll touch her over my dead body," he growled. "That's the plan," Frank laughed. He raised his rifle. Maggie screamed, "No!" But Colt was faster. He shoved her behind him and fired first. The shot tore the lantern from Frank's hand, plunging the ridge into darkness. Chaos exploded. Frank's men scattered, shouting. Colt grabbed Maggie's arm. "Move!" They sprinted through the brush. Bullets shattered trees behind them. Colt turned and fired twice. 2 men fell. Another charged from the left. Colt slammed him down with his shoulder, even injured. "Maggie, keep your head down." She did, but then she heard a scream. Rosie's scream. "Colt, Rosie's here," Maggie cried. "I hear her." Colt's body went rigid. "Then we end this now." They broke into a small clearing and froze. Frank stood in the center, one arm locked around Rosie's neck, the other holding a revolver pressed to her temple. Rosie's face was streaked with tears, eyes wide with terror. "Maggie?" she whimpered. Maggie's knees gave out. Colt caught her before she fell. Frank sneered. "You want her? Trade places. You die, she goes free." "No," Maggie gasped. "No, Frank, don't do this, please." "It's the only way," Frank taunted. "Your life for hers." Maggie stepped forward. Colt grabbed her wrist, voice low, lethal. Don't you dare. She's my sister, Maggie whispered. And you're mine, Colt said, voice breaking despite himself. I'm not letting you walk to your death. Frank cocked the hammer. Choose, he snarled. Maggie's tears streamed hot down her face. Her heart split open, and then Colt stepped in front of her. I choose, he said. You let the girl go. He raised his gun, eyes locked on Frank with pure, unwavering promise. Or I end this right now. To be continued. If you've stayed with Maggie and Colt through every shot fired, every tear shed, every heartbeat shared in the dark woods, then you already know. Stories aren't just stories. They're bridges between places, between strangers, between hearts that may never meet, but still understand each other. Wherever you're listening from, whether it's a crowded city, a quiet bedroom, or a long road in the middle of the night, thank you for being here. Tell me in the comments, you're hearing this tale from which corner of the world? And if you still believe love can bloom even in danger, then don't go anywhere. The next story is already waiting for you.